Hey, greetings folks. Performance reviews where I give you the review from the technician's point of view. And this one's really going to be from the technician's point of view. I have here a Kirby G10. Now the interesting thing about Kirby is they're sold door to door. So if there is a Kirby door to door salesman in your house right now, tell them to get the fuck out, straight up. So there's no real reason to buy a Kirby new. I did this tier list where I rated brands, and I put Kirby low because of how they're traditionally sold. Now, if they were sold in brick and mortar stores at a reasonable price, I would not have put them there. But years of bad sales practices and really sketchy salesmen. And when I say sketchy, for some reason, Kirby salesmen seem to attract a lot of bottom feeders and predators. They will sell these things to old people, and being a 20+ pound vacuum cleaner, that's not really acceptable at all. So today we're going to go through the positives and the negatives of Kirby. We're going to talk about why you might buy one, why you probably won't buy one. We're going to go in the shop and look inside at the mechanical bits. We're also going to explain how the tools work, which is very complicated. We're also going to explain why the shampooer is not a reason you buy this machine. So stay tuned, and we're going to show you a whole bunch of Kirby stuff. So I think the number one thing to keep in mind is that the new Kirby and the Kirby of yesteryears really aren't that different. And I'm going to say 1989 is particularly when this design first came about. Now, a lot of people said it wasn't sold until 1990, but a lot of them are stamped 1989 inside, so that's why I say 1989. Now, if we go back to either of those years, communism was still a thing in Germany. Think about what computers used to look like. Think about what a boombox was, if you're old enough to know what a boombox is. Think about how people played music. Think about carburetors in cars, because half the cars still had carburetors in them in 1990. This is the equivalent of, in my opinion, of buying a 1990 car. Now, there's some benefits and a lot of cons. So up here, we have a height adjustment here. Now this used to be labeled with numbers all the way. Now it's just got some dots and a couple other things there. In back, we have a cluster switch. This button doesn't actually go to the switch. The switch is actually stuck deep in here, and we'll talk about that in a minute. You have a neutral and a drive pedal. This vacuum has a transmission, and that's part of the reason why this vacuum is so heavy, other than they cast aluminum. Just switch that back and forth. The tech drive is actually actuated by the movement in the handle, so you push it a little bit forward or a little bit back, and then it moves the vacuum for you. So in a ranch-style house, that means you could drive this out of the closet. But in a tri-level like what I have, or even a two-story house, this is going to stay on one of your stories and not move. Now, one of the things about Kirby's is they're sold as a jack-of-all-trade machine, and really they are in a lot of ways. If you can lift the headlight assembly up, and you can see this giant piece is just for the headlight. There's no reason to have this excess material there. This could all be integrated in here and not move at all. So you see there's a knob here. Don't touch this yet. You want to turn this, and to assist in turning, there's this lever, though it can break, so be careful and mindful of that. And now the belt is in the off position. Now we can remove the nozzle. So this is the part where you would put any accessories on if you needed to. It also shows the wooden brush roller and rubber belt if we needed to change the rubber belt. And I would expect to change the rubber belt on this machine about every 1 to 3 months is normal. Now some people do go a long time without changing their belt, and those are the same people who go a long time without changing the oil in their vehicle. It's a bad idea, change it. All the debris is also moving through the belt, which is really weird. I don't think there's really any other vacuums that are doing this still. I think maybe a Sentria you can get like that still. I thought they discontinued those, so you'll have to check my math on that one. All the dust and debris is moving through the plastic fan chamber, or the plastic fan, and the chamber is aluminum. So again, really selling the customer, saying this is all metal, that's really kind of a lie, especially when this part is plastic and a lot of things internally are plastic. There's nothing wrong with plastic, but you're not getting really any significant advantage of this being cast aluminum. They do put a nice bumper on the machine. To the back, we're getting into the bag change. There's a nice zipper here. On newer models, the zipper does go up on the side. That is one of the changes, so it is easier to get to. The older models, it was directly in the middle. Not a huge deal. You have a synthetic bag in here and a fill tube. Now, there have been a couple of revisions of this fill tube, but part of the problem with this fill tube is, unlike a normal vacuum hose, if a normal vacuum hose gets a leak, it's got negative air pressure, means it's just going to suck surrounding stuff in, no problem. This has positive air pressure, which means there's air blowing out into this. We'll show that. This has positive air pressure, so you can see it's blowing out, which means if anything gets a leak, any hole, any pin, anything like that, this needs to be replaced because it's going to spew dust out. So I would conclude this part as a wear part. Now, my Kirby is a little bit older and requires a half turn to change the bag. On newer Kirbys, they have changed this to a different style of bag dock. Both are very easy to change, no problems with that. But it is a little harder than something like a Mila or a Cibo, something more modern. And that just zips up. So the soft bag doesn't act like a filter on most Kirbys, unlike an Auric or something like that. The soft bag is really just to protect the inner bag. Now, one thing I hear people talk about online is the difference between the Kirbys is the emptier or the filler on this. I don't believe that 10 or 20 CFM is going to make a difference. So if you're looking at, say, a G4 or G5, you're not going to have significant cleaning difference between this and that. So don't even go there on that. One of the problems with the Kirby being a direct air machine is that right here there's a vent. And what that means is if there's anything on the carpet on the side, you need to be mindful of that vent. So let's see what happens when we're not mindful of the vent. There it is. So that's what happens when we're not mindful of the vent. To give you an idea how far away that was from the Kirby. You might think for the price and weight of the Kirby that it would have a cord rewind mechanism. It doesn't. But it does have a quick release right here that you can pull the cord off. You have about 30-35 feet of cord here, so a little over 10 meters of reach on this. Well, welcome to the in-shop part of the review on the Kirby. And you might be wondering, is this a Kirby you're looking at? Yeah, it sure is. So since I have this apart, I want to talk kind of about the construction of the Kirby and some of the things that make it, well, a little old-fashioned, a little bit unnecessary compared to today's market. So I have one stripped down to the motor. As you can see, the motor itself is made out of a plastic casing. The fan is a plastic fan. However, newer models do have this reinforced with Lexan, which is a slightly better plastic. As you can see, all the dirt moves in, can chew up the belt, and move around in the fan, and then it gets blown into the bag. Well, part of the problem with this design is it tends to leak dirt. And when you're sucking stuff up on a normal vacuum, it's going to go through a hose, through a filtration medium, and then to the motor. That's not how this works. This is actually bringing stuff into the fan and then blowing it into the bag. And part of that problem is it leaking dirt. And how it can leak dirt is the way that these machines are built is that this fan doesn't cool the motor. There's actually a separate fan in here that's cooling the motor through this vent. Now, this is one of the first generation machines that had a filter here. They would later remove this filter, which means it blows carbon dust and anything else that builds up in here back into the air. The other thing is there's a gasket right here that needs to be maintained and cleaned. So the adjustment of the motor at vibrating loose eventually can wear out that gasket. The other thing is, because it's blowing air versus sucking air, the only place it's sucking is from the center here, is that eventually what happens is the gasket goes away. And that gasket is made out of silicone, just like the caulking in your bathroom. So you have to basically re-caulk the machine every so often, about every 4 to 10 years, depending on usage and your climate, but particularly in dry climates, they do need to be done probably a little bit more often. And that can lead to problems. So that's the inside there and how a dirty air machine works. Now, to complicate things, they put this in. This is a transmission. So the back side of the motor here actually has a load to it as well, and it's constantly turning this, which is then in turn making the wheels turn. And this is to overcome the extra weight of the Kirby. Again, if they had put some casters, made some lighter touches, this would be unnecessary, but they continue to go with this. And depending on the year your Kirby, the ratio between the transmission does change a little bit. And as we know, the parts inside this transmission do wear out. There's 2 clutches in here. That's right, it's a double clutch transmission. So when you're actuating the handle, it's actually actuating this lever and causing it to go forward or reverse. You also have this drive and neutral lever. This has a tendency on the newer machines after the G3 to break, and which can be a costly repair in terms because the transmission has to come out of the vacuum and completely apart. That's why I recommend every 1 to 2 years that these machines need to be serviced, taken apart and cleaned out on the inside because of those gaskets on there, because of the transmission. Sometimes things get out of adjustment. So those are a couple of things inside. There is one other thing I think that's notable, is that the cords that Kirby used, this is an excellent example. You see it's yellow. What can happen is, particularly right here where it attaches on the handle, it can get overstressed. And Kirby uses some sort of natural rubber. They don't use like a modern polyurethane on this cord, which means this cord can occasionally catch fire after they get so old. So not only that is 10 years down the line, you have to change the cord because it becomes a fire hazard. Now the next thing I hear a lot of people say is metal, metal, metal. Kirbys are all metal. And you have to remember that inside here there's a plastic guide going up here. Well, Kirbys are made out of aluminum, and the casting is, it's all right on this one, but on the newer models it's pretty atrocious. And it has a lot of impurities in it. They're not using the same quality of aluminum. But aluminum's a soft metal. I don't know if you can see that flex right there. But when this starts to come apart, all this starts to flex and stuff. And on the newer machines, the outside, this white part, which is actually aluminum here, eventually becomes plastic when we get to the G10s and higher. The early G10s were metal. So we have aluminum, which is a softer material, which you can see all the dicks and dings on there. One thing I hear talked about a lot with Kirby is the amount of power the machine has, and you will see that Kirby salesmen will bring something called a bird meter, which goes on the front. You take the nozzle off and test it that way through the 2-inch opening. I consider the bird meter to be kind of a gimmick more than a tester. It only tests airflow. So let's test the working vacuum, which will also be able to test the sealed vacuum. Now I've got this rigged up a little bit weird, and that's because a lot of people don't know is that the Kirby is a 2-speed machine, and it's on its lower speed when it's cleaning carpet or anytime the nozzle is attached. So I've managed to seal it up nice and good with this gizmo that I made for testing vacuums a long time ago. So let's see what it does with the nozzle. So it gets about 10 inches of working vacuum and about 11 sealed. We're going to do that same working vacuum test with the nozzle detached and the tool hose directly connected, which activates the second speed right here on the cluster switch. And you can see we got about 21, 22 inches of working vacuum. So a lot better than with the nozzle attached, but unless you have the accessories in use on the machine with this hose attached, you can't actually unlock that power. To excuse this next part, our microphone batteries died. We're going to do a pickup test on carpet with breakfast cereal, cat litter, flour, and fresh pet hair. Let's see if anything was left behind. Oof! You can see some cat litter here. It seems to have embedded it further in the carpet. Not surprising with the lack of suction of the machine. So the Kirby doesn't have enough suction for heavier objects, but what you will see here is stuff like sand or flour. It will actually pick up very well, which is why it does well in pickup tests by the CRI. Let's see if there's any pet hair left. Yep, there's a little bit of pet hair left as well. I'm going to elaborate why the Kirby has trouble getting the power down. We know the Kirby has high airflow numbers and really low working vacuum numbers and low sealed vacuum numbers. Part of the problem is the nozzle design itself. It's very big, it's very open, and it's not particularly well designed by what we know in terms of airflow physics these days. You can see that there is stuck in there some of the cat litter. Now the reason for that is when we look at the shape of the Kirby nozzle, you notice it's square. This squareness pertains inside the nozzle. While the angles are right, this square creates a lot of air turbulence and really makes it hard to get the power down to the nozzle. We can see with modern nozzle design, no matter what the brand, they're not square, they're round. And that's because that allows for less airflow turbulence, especially around something like a spinning brush. So that's one reason why the Kirby struggles with heavier objects, big pickup, and even pet hair sometimes. I'm going to take a minute to talk about accessories that the Kirby comes with, which really should be the subject of their own video. Oh wait, I already made that video. I'll put a card here to my wife and an engineer trying to figure out how to use the Kirby tools, but I'm going to go through it real quick in case you've never seen it. It's rather ridiculous. So you lift this nozzle up, you turn this knob, you take the nozzle off, set that aside, and then you turn this knob, and now your accessory's on, and you'll grab your accessory box. I want to talk about the rest of accessories because they are standard 1.25 inches, which is really good. And the tools the Kirby comes with, the dusting brush is one of the best in the industries. The larger dusting brush or wall brush is useful. Comes with a massage cup and a mattress inflator. And the crevice tool with this removable brush is all very usable stuff. Again, the Kirby doesn't have a whole lot of power to use this stuff, but it is there. They did at least try to include nicer accessories. And then your brush could be one of two brushes. This is your hard floor brush. Again, doesn't work all that well. A lot of people wonder what this other stuff is for their Kirby, so I'll just briefly show you. It's a really bad idea, but you can take your bag off where all the dirt goes, put your hose where all the dirt goes onto the machine, like so, and then attach this intake with no filtration. And now you've converted your Kirby into a blower, which I'm not going to use in the house because I don't want to blow dirt all over my house because I'm not a brainlet. Then, I guess if you really wanted to be a brainlet, you could use this to spray paint, atomize, or put shampoo in this and sudzo gun something as well. Again, real brainlet idea. You'd use this, and this is why blowers are gone from every other vacuum on the industry. Obviously, the Kirby's too big to use in its upright mode on the stairs, So don't you worry, the Kirby company had a solution. Here was their solution. That's right, you're somehow gonna hold this with one hand, which unless you've been lifting weights, you're not gonna do, and use it somehow to clean your stairs. As you can see, it's too big for that. It is really, really too big for that. Is that the Kirby doesn't balance on stairs, so you do have to set it down. Now I've converted it to be used with a hose, and usually Kirbys come with just your standard upholstery tool and then this very strange zip brush. We're gonna do half of the Rice Krispies with the upholstery tool, half with the zip brush. I will say the shape of this Kirby nozzle lends itself pretty well for doing that. All right, let's try the zip brush. So I have found over the years the zip brush to be basically useless. Again, color might vary, but really kind of useless. As you can see here, got caught in the turbine entrance, and for some reason there are brushes along the edge that don't move, so kind of useless. The upholstery tool, it's a standard upholstery tool. There's not much to be said. I will say the Kirby's lack of suction doesn't really matter when you're concentrating it into a nozzle the size of an upholstery tool. The Kirby's not going to win any maneuverability contests. It definitely doesn't get very low. It's definitely not getting under my bed anytime soon. Unfortunately, at this point, you'll have to stop and grab the accessories, which will take you another 5 minutes, 10 minutes of your day to do. Notice the bag is gone, and there's a single water tank. There's no bladder in here, just a water tank. So, as we know, the Kirby usually blows into the bag. In this case, it blows into the water tank, forcing a little bit of the water and shampoo out, forcing it into the carpet. Then the machine agitates it, and a little bit of the foam will get stuck in this tray, a little bit of topsoil. Nothing that wouldn't have come out when you vacuumed. And the way, again, the bottom of the shampooer works, I'll turn it on its side, you can see the brush right here. Again, it's putting water out this way, and there's no place for this stuff to get sucked up. It doesn't suck anything up and put it in a tank, which means it could possibly ruin your carpet. You could possibly put too much water down, and that's why the shampooer itself is not approved by the CRI or the Carpet and Rug Institute. So I have here a normal carpet extractor next to it. This is a brush, it spits water out, and then it has a suction nozzle right here where it sucks the water out of the carpet, the stain, out of the carpet, and puts it into a tank. And then it has a separate soap tank, and this particular design has a tank within a tank. But this is more or less your average carpet extractor machine, how it works. I think you'll find that this shows that the Kirby really isn't adequate for removing stains or dirt or embedded dirt from your carpet, and you'll still need a carpet extractor. Final thoughts on buying a Kirby Avalir, a Sentria, G5, any of them. They're heavy, they're overly complicated. However, if you buy one used, they can be a remarkable value. You can buy them for under 50 bucks, put another 25 to even 100 bucks into them, and they'll run for another 10, 20 years. So the used value of these machines is very high. The repairability is very high. In fact, I like working on Kirby vacuums better than I like using them. Buying a Kirby brand new doesn't make any sense though. Considering they've been making the same design for the past 30 years, there's no reason to not go with a used machine and just clean it up. I have several tutorials on that. The lack of power and modern cleaning ability and how heavy it is and hard it is to use really rules it out for most people. But again, if you are a college student, you are on a budget and you want a decent vacuum, this is one of the used bargains to look for. I'd recommend you check your local marketplace. I'm also going to include a link below to belts, a brush roller, and some common items that you'll want to change if you get one of these used, just to help you out. Please give this video a thumbs up, comment below, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the bell notification for performance reviews.